Well, welcome once again to Elevenses. I'm Kevin Williams of Survival Skills Rider Training. This is my regular Sunday show. It's number 401. It's Sunday the 14th of January, and it is a fairly chilly and miserable looking day outside here in London right at the moment. As usual, we have a fairly packed show for you. We have Clive and Steve both looked in. Good morning to you both. We'll be looking at some news from Spain, where it looks like open face helmets will be banned and gloves will become compulsory wear. Average speed cameras have gone up in Lincolnshire near a popular biking spot, and particularly, not surprisingly, they have upset the bikers. MBK, I think it was French manufacturer, has now become Yamaha Motor Manufacturing Europe. So that brand has completely disappeared now by the sounds of things. Government-funded interest-free electric bikes and rickshaws for the Punjab will boost the uptake of electric vehicles there. Massachusetts Institute of Technology, they're offering an open source blueprint which will allow you to build, believe it or not, your own fuel cell bike. And Gachaco are opening up their battery swap service to the public in Tokyo. Prior to this, it's been business use only. And Benelli, they've introduced a Tornado 400 MBP, a company I doubt you've heard of. I certainly hadn't. They have a T502X, which both bikes are headed to Europe. We'll have a quick look at both of those today. And then finally, in the in-depth piece at the end of the show, I'll look at the pushback against electric bikes, which seems to be almost a coordinated event by the established motorcycle manufacturers. So stay tuned to the end of the show for that. Now, if you've got a question, anything you want to ask, any puzzles, any comments, drop me a line. I'm always interested to hear what people have to say. I try to get back to you during the show if I possibly can. If I can't, I will get back to you afterwards. So settle yourselves down for the next 30 or so minutes as we carry on with the opening news, which is on the weather. So what's going on with the weather at the moment? Well, what can I say? Every time I sort of open a newspaper this morning, as I did this morning, for example, there was a sensational weather headline. This time it's the Birmingham Mail claiming that weather maps reveal when 7-day snow will blast UK as Met Office warns of -15 °C chill. Right, now it's going to be cold out for sure, because there are northerly winds bringing an Arctic air mass across Britain and Ireland. So it means temperatures will be in the low single figures, and that is actually close to record lows for the south of the UK. And it will mean that there will be nighttime frosts widely inland, but it's nothing like -15 °C except perhaps at the top of the Cairngorms. And whilst there is a risk of snow for the north of Scotland today, and it will spread further south into the north of England and northern Wales, likely on Tuesday, central and southern regions will remain largely dry, and it's likely the further west you go as well, it'll often be sunny. So just watch out for ice, really. So, okay, on to the rest of the news. Well, the first story that I have for you is that there is likely to be a new rule brought in Spain, which will ban the use of open face helmets. Now, this is bound to upset quite a lot of riders because they like to wear jet style helmets, but it looks like it'll be full face or modular helmets that meet obviously the existing safety standards, the ECE standard. What that means, if you've got a dual certificated helmet like I have, which can be ridden perfectly legally in the UK in the open position, isn't actually clear, but it looks like the Spanish, as I say, will be banning jet helmets. Now, the second piece of news is that it will become compulsory to wear CE approved gloves as in France. Now, what's not quite clear from the report is whether this means gloves at all times, or that if you do wear gloves, they must be certificated. There's one other piece of news from Spain, which is that if you ride a small motorcycle or scooter up to 125, you will now have to take an introductory training course, presumably something not too dissimilar from our CBT. Now, previously, if you've been a Spanish license holder for a car, all you had to have had was to have held that license for 3 years, and then you would be automatically certificated to ride one of these small bikes or scooters. Why is all this happening? Well, basically, it's the usual problem. It's the casualty rate. Last year, 299 motorcyclists were killed on Spanish roads. I'm surprised it's that few, actually, because it's fewer than in the UK. And that's up almost 20% from the previous year's total of 254. So it seems that this decreasing safety perspective for motorcyclists in Spain has sparked this response from the Spanish Transport Authority, the DGT. So that's some news from Spain. One comment here, Kevin's looked in as well. He says he could not access us on Facebook today. I don't know why that is. Obviously the show is scheduled to go out on both channels, but thank you for letting me know. Now, when it comes to riding, there are obviously two sides to every coin, and when it comes to speed limits, there are some people who believe that speed limits are there for a purpose. There are other people who believe that speed limits restrict their fun, and certainly the reduction of the speed limit on the A631 up in Lincolnshire, and the introduction of average speed cameras on that road. Now, it's near a popular biker cafe at Willingham Woods near Market Raisin. It's certainly divided opinions. Residents who actually have to put up with the traffic which hurtles through their local area, of course, which includes the lots of bikers visiting the cafe and riding around the local area, which is actually a very pretty, very beautiful area to ride in, actually. They've said that the cameras have slowed traffic and it makes them feel safer. Lincolnshire's Road Safety Partnership said the route had been identified nationally as having high numbers of incidents leading to serious injuries, and that the cameras, which are funded centrally by the DFT, were needed on what they described as a high-risk route. But MCN, of course, reports what the bikers have to say, and the opinion there is split. They go to the cafe weekends. There's a popular bike night on Wednesdays, which I doubt will be too popular at the moment, but come the summer, I'm sure it will be packed. One rider quoted in Motorcycle News claimed the scheme was simply a waste of money, unlikely to save lives, and that he and his mates would simply go riding somewhere else. But another said it's hardly a surprise given the behaviour of a few who speed and wheelie, and the fact that the videos are shared on social media for all, including the authorities, to see. So I very much suspect that the latter issue has something to do with it all. It only takes a few riders with loud pipes and attention-seeking riding to attract the wrong kind of attention. That's actually the subject of my article that's going out in the magazine next month. Now, two changes for Europe and Yamaha. The first thing is that Eric Desains, whose take on the future of Power 2 wheels I discussed just a few days ago, he's moved on, and as of the 1st of January, Yamaha Motor Europe got a new president and CEO, Olivier Prevost, and Yamaha has just renamed the MBK Industry SAS production facility in France to Yamaha Motor Manufacturing Europe. As I say, I think MBK historically were a French brand. I certainly remember MBK scooters and mopeds around in my youth. And they have been a wholly owned Yamaha subsidiary since 1986. I believe that Yamaha actually bought them to get their hands on a 1252 stroke motor. Anyway, they've operated as Yamaha's European production headquarters for a while, but they're now fully subsumed into Yamaha. And it's said that it's not just a name change either. Prevost has already announced that he will upgrade the European production of models, including the Yamaha Tenere 700 and the X-Max, to run more efficiently. And it's likely, of course, that the facility will be a hub for research and development, including, they say, for e-mobility solutions, including electric scooters and electric bicycles. Now, just remember, if you want to enjoy these shows because you've missed one, they go out Sundays, they go out Wednesdays, they go out at 11 a.m. They are almost always live. Occasionally they're recorded, and very occasionally I miss a show. But if you have missed one yourself, that's the place to go. I would suggest my YouTube channel, Survival Skills UK. Don't forget the UK on the end, or you will catch somebody sharpening Boy Scouts with knives and that kind of thing. That is the best place to catch up with all my video products. Now, if you want to kickstart a move to electric bikes, we just talked about Yamaha and how they are moving or improving their production facility. One way to do it is to offer government subsidies. Now, in Pakistan, the Punjab government has just announced the formal commencement of commissioning electric rickshaws, with the first ever e-rickshaw manufacturing license being handed to a company called Sasgar Engineering. Now, 10,000 of these new electric rickshaws would be supplied with interest-free loans backed by the Punjab Bank to the people who want to operate these things. And this addresses some problems that were caused by the government's recent decision to ban unregulated petrol-engined, what are called Quingy rickshaws, citing illegal manufacturing and the need for driver regulation. If you've seen if you've been out there, or if you've seen photos of these things, imagine a sort of a CG125 or something similar, with the rear wheel chopped off and a sort of bit of brazing done, connecting a sort of a rickshaw back end to the powered motorbike thing. Now, on top of that, 10,000 electric bikes will be made available interest-free. These go to students. A further 2,000 electric three-wheeler bikes will be granted to special individuals, also free of interest. Exactly who they might be, I don't know. But it's all down to addressing air pollution issues in Lahore, and the authority has also declared a government-level ban on the purchase of petrol-powered motorcycles. So the sort of things that would have been used by government officials will have to be electric in future. So how do you get into the environmentally friendly motorcycle game? Well, you could build your own electric fuel cell bike. And this is what the team here at Massachusetts Institute of Technology are looking to do. This is the bike. It's not a particularly pretty looking thing, but it is a prototype for their own hydrogen fuel cell powered electric motorcycle. The fuel cell produces electricity. The electricity drives the bike. You probably know that. Now, they base the rolling chassis around what they say is a 1999 ICE motorcycle, not quite sure which one. But what's interesting is that the team are planning to release their knowledge as an open source handbook. Now, the fuel cell itself, it comes from a South Korean company called Doosan, and the guide will document the step-by-step process of how they put the hydrogen fuel cell and the electric motor together into the bike. So riders could, in theory, construct their own. Now, the prototype, which as I said isn't very pretty, as you can see, it's a bit of a sort of a lash up down here in the engine department, but there's a reason for that. It's designed to have the components easily dropped in and out, because what they want to do is they want to test new bits and pieces in the machine. The bike's designed to be a talking point rather than a practical machine. It will appear at shows and conferences. It's due to be at the Consumer Electrics Show, which is in Los Angeles this month, and it will be seen too in the Netherlands in May at the World Hydrogen Summit. And it seems the team are also working on designing an electric motor from scratch too, after they used a commercially available one for testing and research. The electric, they previously run this as a full electric bike, and they completed demonstration events at a test track last year. MIT team says that the project's ongoing, and as they look into the future of hydrogen and fuel cells for electric motorcycles and other vehicles. So, quite an interesting story there. Here's another one. If you remember Gachaco, I think I've pronounced that. No, it's Gachaco. That's it. Must get the pronunciation of that right. Gachaco. Now, if you remember them, they are a battery swap consortium. They've been formed by Japanese manufacturers Honda, Kawasaki, Suzuki, Yamaha, and the Japanese battery power company ENEOS. Now, the 5 companies came together back in 2022, so not long ago. But the idea was to work on a single battery project for lightweight motorcycles. Now, on Christmas Day, Gachaco actually announced plans to begin offering their battery sharing service to individual customers in Tokyo, and it actually launched on Tuesday this week. Now, right now, Gachaco batteries are only fitted to a few Honda electric 2 and 3 wheelers, and only the rather uninspiring EM1E is actually available to private owners. We've seen that on the show some months ago. But the others, including the 3 wheelers, are designed for use as fleet vehicles. Now, one of the issues that I had when I saw the EM1E was that it had a very poor range. But of course, the advantages of a battery swap service are obvious. With sufficient numbers of swap stations, and range no longer becomes the issue. Okay, it might be inconvenient to have to stop and swap your battery over every 20 miles, but on the other hand, you know, if you can't plug your scooter into a handy socket, it does at least mean you won't have to hump your battery indoors and upstairs. And there's a second advantage too. By turning the battery into a pay-as-you-go item, the price of the scooter has also dropped dramatically. So in Tokyo, where there are some local government subsidies, the EM1E costs just $700. That's an astonishing £550. Go and compare that with the price of a petrol-engined moped 50cc bike that you can buy in the UK at the moment. It's an amazingly cheap price. Now, how do you pay for your electricity? Well, you can get the battery on a subscription, so that will suit regular users. Basically, you'll pay a fixed amount each month, and you can presumably go and plug and play as many batteries as you want. Or you can pay as you go, so that if you're only an occasional rider, when you need a battery, you just pay for that battery. That'll presumably be cheaper if you only do minimal mileage. The Gachaco have so far made no statements about international plans, but as the EM1E is actually already available in Europe and Indonesia, it's likely, I would have thought, that they will start installing these battery stations in more markets to follow. And frankly, it would be hard to see Gachaco not opening up the battery swapping service, because the Taiwanese companies Gogoro and Kimco Ionex have already established themselves internationally. If the Japanese are going to catch up, they need to move fairly soon. Right, okay, so motorcycles. Let's have a look at some motorcycles. Now, I found a couple of interesting ones appearing online. Chinese, predictably, and they're both from the Chinese giant Qianjiang Motor, or QJ Motor for short. But both are actually established with the sub-brands that QJ actually own. And this is the first one. It's the Benelli Tornado. It's a 400. It's based on a Chinese market only 402. Now, it's aimed at A2 license holders. And the new twin has actually been updated to meet European regulations, including Euro 5. It's expected to appear in Europe by mid-year. Now, the recipe is fairly familiar. 35 kilowatt, 47 horsepower output, 399cc liquid cooled, fuel injected, double overhead camshaft, twin cylinder with a 6-speed manual gearbox. As you can see, it's painted in that sort of familiar turquoise and silver livery, which is familiar to Benelli. The riding position looks fairly relaxed, fairly gloomy photo, that one. I should usually brighten those up so they're easier to see, but anyway. it's clearly aimed not just at the Japanese competition like the Kawasaki Ninja 400 and the new Ninja 500, Honda's CBR 500R, and the Yamaha YZF R3, but also other bikes are arriving from Chinese manufacturers such as the CF Moto 450 SR, which we've also seen. Now, what sets this bike slightly apart from the others is the rear end. If you look closely, you'll see that it's got a single-sided swinging arm hidden behind that rather ugly looking silencer. Rising rate monoshock, front end is the fairly conventional upside down forks that you would expect. The frame's tubular steel, wheels 17-inch, floating discs, and Nissin calipers, interestingly, as well. Full LED lighting, 5-inch TFT display, Bluetooth smartphone pairing, USB charging. Interestingly, it gets a tyre pressure monitoring system as standard, something you tend to find only on more premium bikes. The tank's 14.8 litres, just over 3 gallons. That should be enough to nudge 200 miles, I would have thought. These bikes should be capable of fairly reasonable fuel consumption, and that means ride away weight fairly light at 172 kilograms, 380 pounds. That's not too bad, really. Now, the CBR 500R, that currently retails at 6,700 pounds. Seems only a few days ago to me that it was £5,000, but there we go. CF Moto 450 SR, that is appearing in showrooms in the UK at about 5,600. So my guess is that the new Benelli will come in at somewhere around about £6,000. Now, let's have a look at another bike range. Now, if you are unfamiliar with MBP or Moto Bologna Passione, to give them their full name, then I won't be surprised, because I'd never heard of them, frankly, and even Google fails to find a link for the company, at least not in Italian. The only info I could find was for Indonesia, where I did find this photo of what appears to be their product range. Now, just like Benelli, MBP, Moto Bologna Passione, may sound Italian, but it's actually a new company founded by the Kiwi Group, who, just like Benelli, are themselves part of QJ Motor. Doesn't it get complicated? So what are they putting on offer to us? Well, it's this bike here. It's the MBP T502. As you might predict, it's a middleweight adventure bike, and since Benelli and MBP are owned by the same parent company, there is a good chance the MBP is heavily based on the Benelli TRK 502, which is the best-selling bike in Italy, incidentally. Now, I'll keep the description again fairly short. 486 liquid cooled fuel injected Euro 5 compliant parallel twin, bang on that 35 kilowatt 47 horsepower A2 limit. The bike gets road oriented tyres. It's a 19-inch front and a 17-inch rear. They're fitted with Pirelli Scorpion tyres, so fairly premium there. The seat height is a little higher, 830 millimeters, but not astronomical. But you do get 210 millimeters of ground clearance and 180 millimeters of travel at both ends, which should be ideal for dealing with the potholes here in London. LED lights, TFT dash. Spokes are actually rim laced, which means you should be able to use tubeless tires on these, I think. You get body protection. There's a practical dual seat, and you also get a small rack at the back. So just like the TRK Benelli, the bike is a bit porky though. 16 litres of fuel on board. It tips the scales at 215 kilograms or 475 pounds, so a lot heavier than the sport bike that we just talked about. Now, there's no availability, no pricing information yet to come out, but the bike is said to be likely to arrive in Europe this year. Right, okay, so before I move on to the final in-depth piece, I just want to throw you something that I found online from an insurance company. It's the ambulance chasers which are the problem, not an insurance company, a solicitors. So look, have a read of that statement. Here are some more interesting UK statistics to know about motorbike accidents. On average, there are about 600 bikers a year killed on our roads in the UK and 7,000 serious injuries. Well, I can tell you quite categorically that is absolute nonsense. For 2022, the figures were 350 fatalities amongst motorcyclists in Great Britain. 5,618 were seriously injured. The last time that there were 600 riders back was prior to 2004. I couldn't find the exact date, but I have got data from 2004 to current, and in 2004 there were over 500 deaths, and numbers have been dropping ever since. So it would be pre 2004, probably around 2000 or even back into the 1990s. So who is actually spouting this rubbish? Well, it's a company called Moto Claims. And from R. James Hutchins Solicitors. What sort of bugs me about this is, why would a company create a page which is so wholly inaccurate? If they created it 25 years ago, maybe I could understand if it was a legacy page that was just hanging around on the internet, but it clearly isn't. It's clearly designed as part of their modern looking site. So, why are they using false statistics? I have absolutely no idea. But the thing, of course, is that if they're settling a claim for me, I wouldn't have much faith in their research if they can't even get a basic figure like that right. Right, okay, Kevin says he's found the link to the show. He was having a semi-senior moment. Okay, no worries. Good to know that it's actually gone out and it's working. Right, okay, so on to the final item for today. We'll be looking at my usual sign off for the day, which is a sort of deep dive into a particular topic. And what I'm looking at today is the electric motorcycles and what seems to be a concerted industry pushback against electric PTWs. Now, you may recall that I was fairly astonished when Triumph announced that they had shelved their electric bike project because they had released a whole series of very bullish press releases, which culminated in the final one, which said that the TE1, quote, had the size and dimensions of a street triple, and it offered category leading 161 kilometers, 100-mile range, plus the performance of 130 kilowatt, 177 PS, 175 brake horsepower, peak power motor. They said it had a 20-minute 0 to 80% charge time, which Triumph themselves said was, quote, a game-changing outcome. And it was all wrapped up in a bike that weighed just 220 kilograms. And then they parked it. Now, even more remarkable in some ways were the remarks of Ducati's European head, Fabrizio Cazzoli. It's less than 3 years since Ducati showed off their new Moto E machine, having won the contract to replace the bikes in that race series, which had formerly been provided by the Italian Energica brand. Now, at the time, the Ducati statement said, quote, the road ahead is still very long, but in the meantime, we've laid a first important brick. The goal is to create, as soon as the technology allows it, a Ducati electric vehicles for road use that is sporty, light, exciting, and able to satisfy all enthusiasts. But by February last year, Cazzoli was saying, quote, electrification will be a long way away, not only for Ducati, but for the entire motorcycle industry, because right now it is not a completely viable solution. Now, move on to a few shows ago. I featured an MCN interview with Suzuki's general manager for motorcycle sales, Akiri Kyuji, and I said that the discussion really only revealed that Suzuki's plans for an electric future were vague, and that he actually said, quote, for large motorcycles for leisure purposes, the company would be, quote, considering adopting carbon neutral fuels, and that Suzuki would be, quote, making further investment directed into alternative sustainable fuels, and that included hydrogen. Now, last week I talked about the MCN interview with Yamaha's outgoing European President Eric Desains about his company's plans, which also centre around synthetic fuels. As he said, in the short term, the internal combustion engine is the best technology you can get. That's a fact. And he went on to suggest that hydrogen isn't a viable option, citing a Japanese report that claimed that switching to synthetic fuel would reduce emissions created during the petrol production stage, just so long as, quote, we produce synthetic gasoline with green energy close to where it will be consumed. Now, that's easier said than done. But to me, this all begins to sound less like an attempt to advance an alternative clean energy solution. As I've explained, the energy demands for producing synthetic fuel in the quantities needed to run even a small percentage of the world's vehicles is unlikely to be met anytime soon. Then it sounds like a carefully considered industry-wide position to push back on the upcoming ICE ban, a sort of hidden statement that if we do nothing, the EU will have to delay the ban. Now, will this be a successful position? Will it win a reprieve for the ICE? Now, frankly, I'm doubtful for 4 reasons. Let's face it, let's start with the obvious plus point. If the motorcycle industry could keep their production lines turning over building ICE engines, I'm sure they'd be very happy indeed, because it would save them a lot of research and investment into alternative fuel sources like hydrogen that needs a modified internal combustion engine, or electricity, which of course needs switching motive source altogether. Now, why do I think it's unlikely that the motorcycle industry will be able to hold back? Well, first of all, the automotive industry is clearly moving to electric power. EV sales have moved from niche to mainstream. There are still problems, including repair costs. Tesla owners have been discovering this. And there are still plenty of die-hard petrol head owners as well, but plenty of drivers do find that EVs meet their needs. William Bannister, who is the CEO of MFG, that's one of the UK's biggest independent filling station groups. They currently own more than 900 sites. He was recently reported by Autocar as predicting that by 2030 the car market could be about 20% electric, rising to 60% by 2035. Now that's enough for his company MFG to have started identifying which of their sites are suitable for installing electric charging hubs. Some already have them, and at around £1 million per site, that's no small investment. Now, the second point is that if mainstream power two-wheeler manufacturers aren't reluctant to move to electric, there are plenty of startups who are more than happy to fill the void. Now, as we've seen on this show, some of them have proven short-lived. Some of them have yet to get their products to market despite lots of press releases, and more will fail in the future. But a few are undoubtedly going to succeed. And India in particular is ramping up their production of EV bikes. Just heard about what's going on in Punjab as well. Third, of course, there's China. If the Japanese and European bike companies aren't meeting needs, expect the Chinese to step in. They did it with inexpensive 125s. Didn't do their reputation much good, but lots of young riders found them very affordable. They've done it with emerging markets. Now, there will be some reluctance to purchase Chinese motorcycles from a lot of riders for the reasons I've just mentioned. But when KTM starts selling European machines, which are actually fully built in China, when they actually start shifting their R&D out of Europe to India and China, then attitudes will start to shift. I don't think it's a coincidence that the Chinese have suddenly launched a shed load of ICE bikes. They're partly helping fill the holes left in the contraction of the Japanese motorcycle manufacturers' ranges. Look at Suzuki, they've hardly got anything to sell, frankly. And my guess is that what they want is to try to get Chinese bikes familiar with riders and owners. Now, it didn't take the Japanese more than a decade to put the UK bike industry out of business. So it won't take as long as people think. And I believe that as soon as they start making electric motorcycles, they will export them to Europe. And fourth and last, the MCIA here in the UK have been arguing that power two-wheelers should be given special dispensation to continue to use the petrol engine, while at the same time they made the rather bizarre indication that they were willing to throw small commuter bikes under the metaphorical electric bus. Now that's a rather bizarre position to take, because their whole rationale for retaining petrol bikes is based on the argument that the ICE engine in motorcycles is economical in terms of fuel consumption, but that fuel consumption is based around those low capacity bikes. Big motorcycles are rarely as fuel efficient, in fact, as medium-sized cars these days. So any argument for special treatment, even if that thinking had been sound, and it isn't, is a really risky strategy, because bike riders are less than 1% of the UK population. So we'd be daft to expect motorcycles to be treated very differently. Just look at the emission rules. Motorcycles were given time to catch up, but now the emission rules for motorcycles are exactly the same as they are for cars. And for years the industry argued that it couldn't be done, but there it is. We have bikes which put out the same amount of emissions as cars do. So where do we go from here? Well, personally, I think that we do a recalibration of what we consider necessary in a motorcycle. Many of us will probably be sitting here saying that electric bikes aren't quick enough, don't go far enough, way too much, but we're not the typical powered two-wheeler users, not even in the UK, and we certainly don't represent the vast majority of motorcycle use across the planet. Now, why did Triumph, you might be wondering, I certainly am, why do they feel the need to develop and then shelve a 175 horsepower bike? What possibly did that prove, other than that you could build a bike as quick as their quickest motorcycle? What could they prove with that they couldn't have proven with a 75 horsepower motorcycle? What would have been the benefits if they tried a less powerful motorcycle in terms of the range of that bike that they prototyped? I don't know. Good question. Now, personally, I've never seen a speed of much over 100 miles per hour as particularly useful, and there aren't many roads where you can easily sustain 100 miles per hour in any case, let alone the license losing propensities of trying to drive at that kind of speed. And what few people seem to realize is that you only need 30 horsepower to maintain a steady 100 miles per hour on the flat. So if you've got a 175 mile per hour bike because you want to ride at 100 miles an hour, you are wasting 145 horsepower. So if you double that 30 horsepower, take it up to 60 odd, you've got plenty of power to spare. I'd say what matters most to riders is probably acceleration off the line while lugging a load. We maybe want to fill it up with camping gear and put a passenger on the back, and people regularly say they need sort of 1300, 1400 cc bikes to be able to do that effectively. But that's torque you're talking about, and if there's one thing that motorcycles with the electric motors do have, it's torque at standstill and at low revs. So unfortunately, torque and power are something that riders still confuse when it comes to performance. So that's my thinking there. Tell me what you think. I'll be very interested to hear what you have to say. Send me your answers on a virtual postcard, please. And Kevin says, what does he have to say? Maybe new bike buyers in the UK are significantly represented by performance-focused bikers. I would dispute that immediately, Kevin. All you have to do is go and look at the MCIA sales figures, and you will see that the sales figures for small capacity bikes outsell the big capacity bikes. It's skewed by the fact a lot of people buy BMW GSs, but if you look at the best-selling bikes in the other categories, the 350 Enfield, for example, if you put all of their bikes together, could be because they have several different models which split over several different categories in the MCIA figures. They regularly outsell everything for the last couple of years. And then of course there are all the scooters and things. So no, we are not the main representatives. All right, okay. That brings us to the end of today's show. So the thing that I want to remind you of, if you haven't heard about it, is the motorcycle conspicuity camouflage talk that I'm giving tomorrow, indeed, at 8 p.m. Now, this is part of my Science of Being Seen project. This is one of the in-depth talks that I deliver from time to time. That's the wrong graphic, isn't it? Where's the graphic? That's the one I wanted, yes. Now, there's a shed load of clothing which is sold that is supposed to enhance our conspicuity, but much of it doesn't work in the way that riders expect it to do. So what would work? What works best? Well, the easiest way to find out is to start at the opposite end, and that's to find out what kind of colours and patterns actually act as camouflage. So come along for that. There is a small charge of £6 to view that, because the money raised by these shows goes back into funding my work on the Science of Being Seen project. So that's tomorrow, 8 p.m. If you can possibly join me, do. If you can't see it live, you can catch up at any time as well. And quick shout out to supporters from the last few days. Where's me? I've lost my oh, there it is. So those are my supporters: Clive, Living Martial Arts, Johan, Mad Cockney, Sandy, and Anonymous. I noted that Claire also contributed just this morning, but she'll get a list in next week's show. But thanks mightily for all your support. If you are not a supporter, do pop over to my Ko-fi page, take a look, sign up. You can become a follower, in which case you just get information every time a post goes up. You can read it free, and you'll get an email update. But if you want to help support me in my writing and access the archive, then you can become a supporter or even a subscriber. Plenty of stuff to read over there, and there are offers on all sorts of things, including paperback books that I've written. So drop me a coffee if you've enjoyed the show, get access to Survival Skills Archive, and get your name in lights here. And that is pretty much it for today. If you are out there on the road, remember the weather is pretty darn cold at the moment. Watch out for flurries of snow in certain areas. Watch out for snow if you're up in Scotland, and keep an eye on the weather forecast just to see how things are changing around the country. But blankets of snow covering everything, -15, no, not going to happen. So that's it for today's show. If you are out there, stay shiny side up, and I hope to see you on Wednesday.